think I can start, no? It's a really exactly sharp one. I start first because I like to make a context, and then will be next. Theoreticians are talking about two types of artists, the makers and the thinkers, and I think I'm a thinker. From my point of view, the context is very important in what I'm doing, shape somehow my practice. We saw already and we know that art changes over time, and I really believe that art now, it's what you do, what you can do out of what you have. And you will see what I had and what I do. I'm coming from Romania, so my name is Lia Perjovschi, to be more precise. I'm coming from Romania. You saw a little bit Romania located on the European map. And this is a map of Europe before the fall of the communism. Romania is the black spot here. For 10 years, from 1980 to 1989, we queue for food. Our life was quite tough. We queue for food, for basic needs, and from time to time, for 2 hours, 3, 4, depends, they cut the electricity. So 10 years was, was Romania a little bit in dark, a black hole. I was born in the middle of Romania, in a medieval town. And I'm the generation of, if you want, the first man stepping on the moon. My mind is still there. I was fascinated with this event, and I'm still curious and thinking at many possibilities, not only on Earth, but also on space. I moved to Bucharest, where I study art. Actually, I study art quite a lot of years in a special school for art, and then high school, and then art academy, and a lot of years practice. In the time when we were queuing for food and basic needs, the dictator was building a huge building, which is even now not finished. Whoops. Yeah, sorry, no problem. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, well, actually, you know, we wake up all the time hearing these issues. My teenage period and youth, let's say, was really marked by the communism. This was the situation in which I told you, queuing for food, or being controlled when you expect less. The art we study was more about art history, but not contemporary art. Religion history, I mean religions, art, and so on, or realism, socialism. These are not my paintings. I give you some examples of what was around me, or official paintings for the dictators. I didn't like, but I didn't know what to do. So I was looking for possibilities. And I tried to organize informal meetings in our apartment with people coming from different fields, like writers, musicians, actors, and so on. And slowly, slowly, I started to do performance without knowing what means performance. For me, it was more an experiment, if you want, art therapy, but again, without knowing about any art therapy or whatever. In this case, I was a student, and I want to check if my colleagues feel like I feel, the connections between us, how, in which way we depend on the others. Was an experiment for 8 hours, almost, but more for waiting for somebody to record and then tie them, and then actually the movement was quite quickly. Here I treat my body like a piece of paper, falling asleep or being really totally without energy somehow during the communist time also. And thanks God, the revolution came. So 1989, we were 29 years old, and we participated in the revolution. And not only in the revolution, but 1 year we fight on the streets for a democratic society, for democratic institutions, and so on. We still fight, but the first year after the revolution was quite tough. Here was a story almost like a civil war. And this is a performance I did in 1993. I created a doll, and I wanted to talk with her and fight with her and use her to provoke the others, because were years in which we were talking mainly about guiltiness. And the majority in the society was saying that the dictator was guilty for everything what happens. And actually, if I was looking at my experience, and from time to time I realized I was thinking that not only the dictator, but we too, being a silent, letting go things we shouldn't be let go, or maybe have to be only questioned and so on. So too much people give up things which could be important in their life, or even will modify their life in a somehow dangerous way. So we were close to, I don't know, in my case, I was close to, in a way, die. It was a boring society. Only interdictions, only silence, keep your mouth shut, don't talk and control. For me, it was way too much. What you see here is the Art Academy in Bucharest, and the library to the right, belonging to the Art Academy, and behind the ugly building, but only because it's not restored, was a building full with studios. And there, in 1990, totally by accident, happy accident, we received our studio. After participating in the revolution, fighting on the streets, we couldn't had the comfort to create objects, paintings, and so on. So our studio became a meeting point, a debate space, a frame to put in questions things which were not wrong, were not right. So, and from time to time we had informal meetings with and presentations of specialists also coming from here and there, Europe, United States, and so on. Here it's a PhD student in specialist in experimental film from 50s till today. Was wonderful lecture. Or yeah, groups of curators, artists from mainly from Europe, or journalists from United States. So somehow they find out about our studio, and slowly, slowly we host all kinds of events. This is more or less the end of my studio and the archive. In this studio, yeah, I forgot to tell you that in this studio, because 15 years were missing from my knowledge, the 50s to 90s, I tried to recuperate when I was able to travel. And in since 1990, I started to establish an archive in the studio. It was actually the theoretical platform or frame for the debates and discussion in our studio. And we didn't have other space, so we were using the studio. That's why sometimes you will hear me saying archive, studio, and so on. Also from 1990, traveling, I start to be intrigued by the globe. Once upon a time, being a tool for knowledge, became a joke somehow in the society. And especially for me, I couldn't believe, you know, to see a globe with legs going like and shaking, or having, yeah, everything you see, it's my collection of these weird, not necessarily toys, objects, quotidian objects, and so on. I can tell you more about this, so if you ask, I will tell you more, but now I go a little bit faster because we like also to talk a lot. So. Another collection, what I started in 1990, was exhibitions. I started to collect exhibitions. I took images from big shows, Biennale, Documenta, Venice Biennale, mainly you will see here a selection, of course. Usually I'm not allowed to take photos, but I use like didactic material, so in a way I think was okay. But somebody told me something interesting, that maybe the institutions don't have anymore these images because they photograph the shows from a certain angle. So maybe my archive could be useful also for retroactive. Yeah, also images. These elements are part of the archive. This practice of collecting materials, postcards, folders from exhibitions, with selection, of course, not everything. What was interesting because of the image or because the text or the title, I collected, and I tried to organize them. So this is what I call the archive. And here it's a small inventory of multiples I have in the collection, or yeah, multiples in terms of posters, folders, postcards, multiple used by, proposed by artists like Felix Gonzalez Torres candies, or yeah. Or sometimes I even do replicas of some works, only to be able to explain the work in some exhibitions where I present a kit from my archive. Yep. Like in this situation. Slowly I discovered myself being a kind of detective in art history or in the contemporary culture. And I had the idea to propose the other one to become detective, the viewer. Because a little bit, if you see, the museums are empty, the galleries are empty. And I know being an artist is such a hard job. I'm working from the morning to the night. So a little bit I'm frustrated why people are not coming, because it's something for them to stimulate their ideas, their creativity and so on. And then I said maybe they feel like from time to time they used to feel abandoned somehow, or that art is not for them. And then I was trying to look for a solution to make them curious, and proposing objects in plastic bags and with labels, very short information, will make people to dig out in boxes or on the table and so on. And they really become a kind of detectives, and they discover that history for themselves. This will be one of my exhibitions in which I used a kit. That means a short collection of elements from the archive in order to talk on certain issues. Yeah, this was '98. I had 150 slide viewers. All the time I'm looking for publications and so on, or related issues. You know, in some exhibitions you will see a corner with books. Actually, for me, were main elements in the exhibition. Or this is another solution to how to present materials from the archive in Royal College in London. When I can afford, I invite interesting people from different fields to have a talk in the frame of the exhibition. Here I'm at home, And we had young philosophers, a former dissident, a woman who make a difference in our political positions during the communist time. In 2000, we were invited to be moderators of a live program, and this was based a lot on the materials of our archives. So for the first time in 2000, the contemporary art was distributed national on Romanian television. It was more like a happening each Saturday for 3 hours live. And not only visual arts, we had, we were the moderators for the 7 departments like theater, film, politics even. We enjoyed very much, but then the bad guys win the power and we didn't want to credit because this was the channel 1. So we didn't want to credit the power, so we left the television. These are some examples of my publications. I wanted to be sure that everybody knows the notions of contemporary art, documents, what means conceptual art, so dictionary of terms, chronologies. I'm fascinated about timelines. So what you see here, the big one, it's on art history from modernist till today. You can see in our class. You are more than welcome to come and visit us, but Saturday, please. And then a general timeline. This timeline I started in 1998, and it's from dinosaurs to Google going China. So I started in 2006. Now I continue, but I have to make another selection and continue the timeline. What is interesting for me, it's I was curious in interesting ideas. I'm bored by wars, by stupid stuff, by Madonna and I don't know whom. Non-information, no interesting proposals and so on. So I was digging out for interesting people, interesting ideas, ideas which change our life in better, and not dig out and take out from us the worst and so on. So I want to tell you this. I was surprised to discover that even in physics, there are delays of 60 years or 200 years for ideas to be continued, to be developed and so on, unfortunately. So you can imagine in culture what delay could be. And also I discovered in a book a very interesting thought, and I want to tell you that doesn't matter, for me it's very important, doesn't matter how many inventors you have in a culture, but depends on the level of the culture to recognize the invention. So actually, we need a majority. That's why I believe that really education, it's really very important. But not by force, not by manipulation, even if it's a good one, but to share, to give, to really give what you didn't have. I think it's a have to if we want really to see what we are able to do or to find out. Because every discovery, it's depending on the tools we have. So in order to create tools, we need to be intelligent and so on. This is a fragment from timeline on my culture, the modernist time when was a big split between spiritualism and more research-orientated direction. And here is who is controlling mass media in Romania, the guys behind. Yeah, this is the art history, another newspapers. I also want to know as much as possible. So here's a diagram on subject. What builds, when we say who we are, actually who builds who we are? It's the culture where we grow, is the family, is the education, is the information even the food we eat shape us. So it's a kind of compilation from a lot of sources, books and so on the main key ideas entering in this what we call generic subject identity. And the last newspaper will be the detective draft. Sometimes I go for more impression, but sometimes I go really, these are keywords for critical thinking, one of the newspapers. In 2000, in the parliament, which is occupying this building, moved the Contemporary Art Museum in Romania. So we boycott this because we cannot accept the Museum of Contemporary Art being in the parliament. And also because it was established by one guy, this is the former prime minister, who liked to hunt like the former dictator. And I get scared. I thought, it's another Ceausescu, so it's impossible. In 2005, they cut the electricity in the building and the water in the studio where we had the studio and where we actually had the archive. And for 5 years, we were like, from time to time there, only to show the space, but nothing more because we couldn't stay anymore. So everything was packed, and now before we came to Salzburg, we moved everything because we realized that we cannot count on our culture and authorities and so on. Of course, maybe we are too critical. We decided to build a storage space for the archive. So in some years, the archive will function again, maybe in another shape with other proposal and other meaning. But in Sibiu, in our born town, and we are very happy in a way that we succeed to do this, but also that we didn't give up. In time will be, we hope, a free library. Sorry. So here it's almost my last project I developed in 2005, I think, a knowledge museum. I really want to build a knowledge museum. So far, I pretend to be an architect with this plan, and I have a model. On table, you see a collection of objects I bought in shops of different museums. Science museum, art museum, toy museum, everywhere I go. Europe, United States, or Asia, and on the wall you see my research. I start this interdisciplinary research. I start in 1999. Are diagrams in which I try to explain everything I did first for myself. I needed to know. I needed to see the relations, or I wanted to see visually, like the history in the case of the timelines. And all the time I present according with the space, how I can. On a table, I mean, yeah, the dimensions are variable. What you see in the back is the universe department. So my knowledge museum, I want to have 7 departments, basic. Starting from the universe, zooming on the earth, body, culture, science, art, and knowledge will be the starting point. What else? Because, I mean, I have a reason why I end up in a knowledge museum. Doing this obsessively, in a way, research on art to recuperate these 15 years, I said, okay, at a certain point, I discovered that I get bored of art, and I needed a break. I needed a fresh air. And I wanted to be surprised again, because I start to slowly to lose my interest or my curiosity in art. And then I start to visit the science museums and so on. So that's why somehow I discover a new world. But also, actually, art is not having borders like everything. Physics is not having borders. Chemistry, mathematics, nothing it's having borders. Why we look at so restrictive somehow? Was a question for myself. So then I discovered this, and I feel really great trying to understand everything. So, done?
If Lia is the generation of the first man stepping on the moon, I'm the generation of the Berlin Wall built up in the same year I was born. So, let's see. Like Lia made you a context of where we've been coming from, like the black photos upstairs. So now the situation changed. What was once ideological propaganda changed to a consumerist one. And one was once upon a time queuing for goods. Now it's like, you know, reality of the what's left after you consume the goods. So we are living in a very changing society, and Bucharest is one of the most dynamic cities. It was until the crisis struck. So very dynamic place where everything can change every other month or every other week. So what you see here is a city which is completely plugged in, internet and television and whatever, and accidentally trying to restore some of part of its history. And the connection between today and history is still very problematic because Romania never solved this yet. It never faced truly its fascist and its communist period. So we are living now under some banners. And the problem is either it's the same, a banner who advertised toothbrush or a cultural event. So in this kind of circumstances, I had to position myself as an artist. And if you remember what Lia showed you, this is the way the artists respond to dictatorship, being very obedient. By the way, I don't know, I mean, in my culture, visual artists were not courageous at all. So the ones who fight against dictatorship was the writers, or either the actors, but the visual artists were completely either obeying or skipping out or disappearing in the landscape or somewhere hidden in a place. So this is the way they obeyed in a communist time, and this is the way they do today, transforming all this history into a grand spectacle. And the society, the contemporary society, is doing right this. They take a tragedy and make a spectacle out of it. So in order to somehow maintain a kind of sane minds, I try to, as Lia did, detach myself from the very heavy academic education we got and find somehow a language or an artistic position who can answer or respond to the dramatical change around us. And I was trying with this very handmade kind of psychedelic, these are like 50,000 faces. Like I was trying, but if I'm like, it involved many work in a work, the work is good. But I was also like very fascinated by the masses. For the first time in our life, we've been part of a mass. We grew up in a communist society. We never been together with the others. So it took a revolution to be together with these people, to really feel you as part of some larger group. So I try to describe the group. This is a video installation from 1992 where it's a video camera who scanned this mass of people and shoot the image to a screen where you can recognize each by each. And it was like meant to describe the surveillance system we lived in 1980s, but it can apply very well to your society today. So other type of installations at the time I was fascinated by drawing was also like very big size and a lot of time incorporating. This is like a giant library of things. It's the library we've been missing because, you know, you can survive the missing of the food, of the meat, but you can barely survive the missing of the books. So this is like what my fantasy about is knowledge, like Lia's knowledge. This, you know, you have to flip in and you have to discover, and it's impossible to read all these drawings. And this was my first years after the communist collapse, having this kind of freedom to create larger works and outside the academical vision. And so I need about 10 years to get out of the school, the rules of the school put in my head, and another years to somehow forge a language who will allow me as an artist from Romania more or less the maximal freedom I could envision. So it was a passage of 10 years from paper drawing to drawing directly to the wall. We've been coming from a very poor society, and we are coming from very poor families. We could never survive in the condition of the art, how it is in a capitalistic world. So we have to invent something. We can never pay the transport. We never have the institution to ship our works. We never have, insurance company or whatever. So we have to imagine, discover a language which is contemporary enough, but also low budget and very easy to work with. So in my case, this is the drawing. And since like 2001, I've been doing this installation directly on the architecture where I'm invited. So I never planned. I go to some place, I research in that place, and what I found, I put on the walls. And this is all coming from my connection with the media. I've been working with a newspaper, political weekly magazine since 1991, every week. So every week I have to transform a text, which is usually political, into a visual image. And I have to do so. If you take the text, the image have to survive by itself. Therefore, everything you see by me, it's an image, and the text is gone. It's coming from either a newspaper, a television, or whatever. So my point of interest is not my country, but it's the world at large. How it is today within rich country who speaks and poor country who listen, or about this kind of ideology, which is, for my surprise, after so many years, fascist kind of ideas are back. And left ideology failed. There have been never enough left. Communist practice collapsed completely. Or, you can describe the society of today in this kind of house, car, credit, me. Or about this total consumerist society. You see, you want a banana, you go to supermarket. Get out, you forgot the fucking banana. Or do you remember the iconic image of some Chinese guy with bags in front of some tanks? So now you need a tank to stop the people with bags coming from. What about this? It's about the fashion. What about freedom? What about art, where the context and the label sometimes is more important than the art itself? Or, we are living in this very pretending time. Everybody's so radical, so sacrificing himself until the free is gone, or until the art forum is gone, and then, So, freedom of expression is a question of how you define this. How, until where you put the limit yourself. From the beginning of the speech until to the end of the speech, or whatever. So, either you can take this drawing as a very cynical drawing when somebody is addressing to a homeless, like less is more. But I'm not. I try to empathize with the subject I draw. I try to comprehend it, and I try to re-deliver it to you in a very simple form. You agree or not, but I make you think about it. And, this is the world you live. We are all promised a certain safetiness, but in order to have this safetiness, our maneuver space is less and less. And coming back to the surveillance work I did. So I start to draw on architecture, black and white, like here in Fanabe Museum in Eindhoven. I always get these kind of spaces which more or less are left over, shitty staircases, this kind of grand architecture of today which is never done for artists. It's done for the architect who build it. It's always all these kind of spaces we don't know what to do with them. Anyways, so I do with them. So, or white on black, like here in a very interesting space in Lille in France, which is a former post office. Or like on the glass, because there are some, the space is what you invent, what you decide is a space. Lia and I, we always use this format of a newspaper, which is like, we call it like 8-page gallery. Insert in newspapers, you can invent space. It's not that you can depend, you have to depend on the system of institution existing. You can discover this everywhere. So this was in Tate, so between the St. Paul and Tate Modern, there's the Millennium Bridge. Or sometimes outdoor. Sometimes I am invited to draw outdoor, but I do it with gentleness because I think public space is a very complex issue. And we as artists, we have the same like rights, but we also have responsibility, especially when we are active in public space. In my case, I like to have the frame of an institution, newspaper, or a museum, because then my drawing, who looks like a cartoon of graffiti, becomes more radical in a sense. It's like a contradiction. It's becoming like very tough. Outside in the street, I don't know. It can be misleaded by kind of advertising. So this, I got invited for the Sydney Biennale, and I found these spots on the National Gallery of Australia where, you know, when they erected, they have these spots for bas-relief, and they ran out of money. So I came with some chalk to complete the new vision about art. There are new heroes on the market, not Rubens, and trying to be also site-specific about this problem they have there with, you know, the history. They keep throwing it out and it keep coming back. It's the same like Romania. So my practice in time, it came from experience, from one project to another, with a lot of misleading, with a lot of failures, with a lot of things I tried and never worked out. With a lot of things I went in a very academic but conservative way of thinking. And at a certain moment you have to be conceptualized. And my concept about my work, my main category, my main feature is that I'm disappearing. I'm present when I'm present, and then I'm gone. So my art is either erased, washed, paint over, destroyed in somehow. So I will show you some example of this. The classical one is I do a drawing on the space they gave me, like here in Museum of Modern Art in New York. And all this spectacle of building it, especially in the spaces I cannot be secluded by myself. So you like it or not, you are a monkey performing in front of an audience, and they got from your performance whatever they like. This is mirrored by the destruction of this process, because after the show is gone, they have to paint. So this is the Museum of Modern Art, one of the biggest museums on the planet, which have the mission to conserve, preserve, value art, and they have to destroy it because the time is up. So other practice I did like at the beginning of my drawings on architecture in 1999 and the Venice Biennale in the Romanian pavilion. Low budget, so that means I draw directly the floor of the pavilion, so the people had to literally consume it. 6 months, it was gone. And as a quotation to this early project I did in the national frame, when I was invited in the international part of the Venice Biennale, and I also got shitty spaces like this entrance, exits, corridors. I made drawings with charcoal and I never fixed them. So all these people coming, the best professional in the world, director of museum, art critics, every profession you can imagine in 3 days, 3,000 of them, they come to see the art. And at the human level, 6 months they kind of erase it. And it's like, for me, it's like, I'm not there to witness the destruction. But when I see the documentation, I find it kind of poetic, because it's as I'm giving every time a chance to do it again better, to kind of rebirth that drawing specifically. So other way to, let's say, disappear is by this tactic I did in Tate London, in Tate Liverpool. So I did a drawing like on a blackboard, and then we left chalks for people to draw. And they keep drawing. And they keep drawing. So they eat you in somehow. And it was kind of a beautiful process. The beginning was a bit traumatic, because the statement people do usually is by not taught. These are instinctively childish stupido, kind of. I love Jenny or whatever. But then when the mass of these statements come, then the thinking comes. You have to discover space, you have to find ways. So it becomes like a kind of school of expression. So another way to disappear is this in a commercial context. This is Gallery Gregor Podnar in Berlin. I draw on a linoleum, and if you want to buy a drawing, we cut it with a cutter and we keep it. So the measure of disappearing is the measure of success. Successful show. And maybe a more subtle kind of disappearing. This is a gallery, a space in London, Bloomberg space, and it's a contradiction in terms. It's one of the single non-profit spaces in London, but it is built by the Bloomberg company, which is one of the most profitable company you can ever imagine. It's the mayor of New York, the guy. So I don't draw the gallery, I draw the windows, the transparent part of the. So then, window, it's a very interesting material, because you really have to focus. You either see through, you can miss the drawing, or it's a reflection on what you see. It's the reflection of the city. So this is a more subtle kind of. And maybe the most known or most radical disappearance I had is this in 1993. Like Lia told you about this quasi-civil war we had. So as a result of the political and social development of our country, you can imagine you are witnessing and you are part of a revolution. That means an enormous traumatic event will open a possibility for utopia to become true. So everything you imagine that as a best society, it's possible, is within your reach. And in 1 year, everything collapses. And all the boring situation comes back to you, and it's a very depressing moment, because everything you dream of, it's something else coming. So I made, as a performance, I tattooed the name of my country on my shoulder. And I carry with me 10 years. And in 2003, in a different context, with a different kind of attitude, I took it out. It was much more painful and long and expensive process. The making cost me a beer. And the demaking cost 3,000 euros. Now it's cheaper, but they are more advanced. So several sessions, and then
Actually,
Romania's gone.
Didn't get rid of Romania because the doctor explained that the ink doesn't disappear. It's traveling in your body. So
They just
Romania
they
here,
bomb it and
under
split
the
it.
arm. I like the story.
So, like to finish this short presentation, I was thinking that sometimes, this context looks to you through the magazine in the lounge room and through the exhibition you see in this city, like in a sense very spectacular and very expensive and restrictive in some ways, and also in some ways it looks like a looping in itself, a reference to art, who reference to art, and so what do I care? So then I think that one of the strategy, that's my strategy, in this kind of circumstances is to use less and less of this spectacular money, but more of the content of it, in the sense that in the museum I appear, it's such a big contrast when you put a drawing about, a conflict of today, with some kind of art historical presence until your room, then it makes very interesting. And one of my great experience in all these last 20 years was that I connect every time with the guards, with the people which are guarding the art. These are the people in all these museums who are coming, do the job of their life, and they have nothing, no clue, or no closeness to the art sometimes at all. They just pass by, they don't understand it, they guard it. So for my best experience when I can hook with this and they start to understand the process and what that means. And sometimes it's more good than to have a text in an art magazine or, you know, like whatever price. Thank you very much.
The issue for all these talks this year is the techniques in art, and we really want we use some images really to tell you that actually the techniques comes from the context and the problems you face. I mean, I want to say that it's an ideal what we learn in the school about being an artist, doing your works in a certain way. We learn a lot of somehow rules or whatever. Actually, they are not working. After you finish, it's totally another reality. You have to pay the bill. You have to manage your life. You will see, I was reading somewhere that you change your profession in between 4 and 9 times, and I will add even more. We are like really a bussola, you know, looking for new opportunities or opportunities to survive and so on. Actually, we have to be very flexible like human beings and like artists, of course, again. So don't avoid, in a way, I will say, after reading a lot and so on, my conclusion is don't avoid what happens, what comes to you, because this is for you to develop.
By the
and
way,
is not to be avoided.
That drawing you asked for me, the one on the ground, is by accident, because we never get the budget promised by the Minister of Culture, so I have to go to do something in the National Pavilion. Sorry.
Can you comment on the graffiti situation? That you say you avoid to do this in the public space?
Not, I don't avoid, I'm kind of shy. So when I'm in a public space, I do it with chalk. So if it rains, it's gone. Okay. Yes, I can comment. I like some, I hate some.
Or you don't like?
I think, especially in my culture, when they got the freedom to express in public space, and it's much more free than here, because nobody cares, and the police don't have time or whatever. So they become very baroque, the graffiti, so they become self-obsessed, and they forget that in my country, the first graffiti was in the revolution time, when they say something political against a dictatorship.
People
now
are
they
shot
become very illustrative.
Yeah.
So I'm more close to the stencil graffiti, to the storytelling in the city, than to the occupying space, I understand all this. Making noise, disturbing, scratching. I understand it. I don't agree with it. I hate in the same measure an advertising on my bus, because I can't see the city, or a graffiti.
Or
but I learn from these people.
Or a noise somewhere.
Sometimes what is bugging me a lot is that how expensive the sprays are. So you have to become like from a rich family to do graffiti. That's kind of funny.
He doesn't like because the graffiti is a little bit too decorative.
Yeah, but
it is sometimes a subculture of
yes.
teenagers.
There's subculture, and then in my country there's people who are graduating the art academies that don't have enough space to show. They are using the city because of that, or because it's cool. And sometimes they have a website where they plainly advertise how illegal they are. So then it's like, But it's interesting as a phenomenon, and it's constantly generating problems and possibilities, sometimes more than the institution can do.
We like to talk, but you need to have questions. Of course, we can talk all these days. Yeah.
I have two questions. The one, I think both of your work, what's really clear about it is that like the eventual expression that you put out is very, it's quite carefully thought through, and you realize that there's a lot of cost to putting something in the public space, and you make very sure that what you're saying, you're quite sort of convinced of it. And we've sort of discussed this already, but do you think that it's the context of not having a space to express within that mostly led to that, or has it just been like a gradual process of learning how to be convinced by what you're saying?
You mean in the public space or in general?
In general.
Just in general,
In
with
general.
expression, as like just feeling convinced by what it is that you have to say is meaningful whatsoever to put it out.
I grew up in a way hearing the artists are free to express whatever and so on, and you should be free, and down censure and so on. I agree, art should be free, artists should be free, no censure and so on. But, how Dan said already, don't forget about responsibility. Because if we are thinking, okay, but what kind of effect it's having on me, the freedom of the other one, it's smashing me. So, not only like artists, but also like a normal human, you have to take care of the other one, at least in public space or whatever. We influence each other. So it's better to pay attention at noise. And also I saw a documentary on television on Discovery. One of these guys going around and was in Asia somewhere, asking a monk what he can do now in this crazy world, somehow very dynamic, overwhelming with information and so on. And the monk said, whatever, but maybe don't add more to the noise. And I would like to borrow this idea, but it's enough. You know, I like Dada movement. It was provoking and it's so important. But actually, if we want to be Dada in that terms, it's not functioning. Because in that term, they had bourgeois society, a little bit not so much noise, and they created noise to wake up people. Now, you don't need music to make them sleep, not at all. No, but a little bit, in order to be able to talk, you need a little bit coherence or a little bit more silence.
But for instance, I think we did a very catastrophic school. We didn't have a good school, and we never learned art history, so we never knew about the 60s until after the communist collapse. Or if you ever we hear something, you could not click to some, you could not hang it on your apparatus. So what we learned was from experience. So we have to do something to fail or to win in order to comprehend how this mechanism works. We never have a theoretical base. So we never have grandparents. So I constantly they are trying to comprehend what I do or what Lia do, and they are constantly throwing to us a kind of models of artists, and we never heard about these guys. So I went in New York first time, and they said to me about Saul Steinberg. I have never heard about this kind of guy, and he's, by the way, a Jewish born in Romania, and he had this kind of elementary drawing, you know, fantastic. I had no idea about it. So we had to learn and do the mistake, and that's why Lia is recreating art history and comprehending, because we had to loop it, we had to do it first. We never knew it was there. You know, and you have shocks as an artist that you suddenly see your practice done 40 years earlier better. Like, you know, so we had to passed through these tragic moments. It was scary because you have the freedom, you do the freedom, and it's not good enough.
We are a bit like maybe Dada in their time, or 60s, 70s in their time, and living now again.
But I think it's like, don't understand, we have been like anti-communist. We've been anti-communist after the communist collapse. We never granted any possibility to become anti. All the system we grew up was completely controlled. This is Romania. There's other countries in the East are different. So we had to manage our life in this kind of control society. Now it's a different type of control, but now we are better.
Prepared.
Better prepared. So now we can somehow have some answers there. So our statements and art, you'll see, is motivated by this, but this is our case. It's a particular case.
But what Lia said about using these sort of methods to, like education being important to, so that a populist vote or whatever would actually end up being the best one if everybody was educated. I think that's probably one of the best things that I've heard. But the second question was,
You have to define populist, because we may mistake terms.
Majority.
Yeah, it's a good word, but I mean that like if more people could benefit from, you know, all this research and
knowledge and so on.
And be more critical.
You know, Francis, we had to paint for the working class in communist time, and we never did. We never care about working class. We never care about other people, categories. We always care in that kind of society, with that kind of education, about our own milieu. So now it's a different time. Now you don't have to, but you can.
Well, I mean, I think there's a sense of responsibility that comes through is one of the best things that you get from both of your practices. But the second question I wanted to ask was what exhausts you?
What exhaust?
Like when do you just want to stop? Because there's all this responsibility and it's, you know, it's a lot to take on. So
I'm exhausted by the fight with my context. And I organized an exhibition was based on idea of a statement, having a short statement, having the courage to say what you like, what you don't like, and so on. And I had also guests from different fields, and one, for the first guest, we had a round table discussion and so on, and she provoked us with the question, who wants to change the world? And I said, I want to change the world, and I was the only one. And I said, oh my God, maybe that's why it's so tiring somehow, because the others don't think that they change anyway. We all change the world. Having 3 cellulars, we change the world. Don't mention your brain, your body, how it's affected. But so it's good to know that we change, then maybe we think a little bit better what we transfer, what we propose, in what we take part, or in what we don't take part. So I'm more exhausted by my context. It's too much fight.
I have like a generic drawing stating that I'm not exotic, but I'm exhausted. So I was exotic until I was after the war, then when the war came down, and I'm like everybody else, exhausted. And that's a common quality, which is good. It means it's working, you work.
But I discovered something, that if you let yourself being exhausted, you will become even more exhausted. So it's good to be aware and say, oh, no, but I will feel fine, and so on, and then I recover my energy. And then usually it's... we are also very satisfied by what we did, because we did quite a lot, and we were very lucky. But in a way, I think we ask to be lucky or something. Or I like in a way, my context, because no means also yes, or could be transferred in yes. You can change it. I mean, it's exhausted because you have to build everything, not only institutions, but everything, not only relations, and not only conventions, and not only a kind of rules, or, You have to build everything. and this everything,
but it's still
takes
like
time.
it's a context we are now living, in spite of the fact we've been thrown out with the archive from a space. It's a space which is very challenging because you constantly meet opposition. So you constantly have to refine your speech, your attack, your strategy, or your tactics. I think it's very complicated to find ways or different ways in a society who function very well, who accept every of your ideas or whatever. So
for me, it's funny.
It's depressive, but you also can get some energy out of it.
A curator from Spain, another curator from Ljubljana, and another curator from Hamburg want the archive. So for me, it's funny in a context full with libraries, archive, museums, and so on, want my archive, which is in an important archive. It's mainly about transition period, and not only in Romania. Maybe it's a transition time angle, but it's international. And my context wants to kill this project or what I have there. No support, erasing. So this, in a way, makes me tired.
Disappearing and exhausting, you said about disappearing is
But I'm back. I'm always back. I'm like the boomerang.
How I told you, we don't forget and we say, oh, no, it's good to wake up.
Very precise and cynical, I can tell you that I can.
You are not cynical.
I can be back in the same museum in about 3 years. So I'm constantly liberating spaces for my projects. Not I'm occupying them, because if you do a show or a retrospective here in the Kunstverein, they don't ask you to come again, maybe in 15 years or 20, right?
What is your dream?
My dream is to travel. I was short. Was all the time, and it still is, to travel everywhere, to see as much as possible, to know as much as possible.
You see, in some ways, we kind of reach some part. You know, you saw Lia's collection of globes. Each of that globe was bought in a place we've been, because until 29 years old, they deny our travels or our freedom of traveling around. So in some aspects, this dream came true in some aspects. So this is what I always dreamed to do, not in this very moment here, but like to be artists and to have a language and to speak with the world. And we are doing this in various degrees, and I think it can be improved. So I'm dreaming of maybe, like Lia said, more intellectual, intelligent environment, because I was horrified to see when exactly now, when everybody on this planet, or almost everybody, have an enormous possibility technological. You can be plugged in with everybody from the planet. You can mentally control everything, knowledge and space. You have been given such much power as individual. In this very moment, look at what's happening. What kind of tragedy can occur. So it's like frustrating. How come? Like the number of people who graduate universities in this very moment is probably the largest number of people graduating ever. So how come? You know, how come are you behave? Are we? I think we are much more smart than we look or we act. So maybe this is the dream, to contribute somehow to this.
He likes to make people laugh in order to relax them a bit, or the tension. Not really. Always he likes it to, in a way, to make them laugh and think or something. Being relaxed. And
Yeah.
Is your archive also on the internet?
no, I don't have energy for this.
We lack flesh and blood.
I mean, to put on it, anyway,
Bones.
I sit at the computer way too much. And I have to choose. I put everything on internet, or I go on with the research. And for me, it's more important to go on with the research and find possibilities for physical contact. I like more, because there are a lot of stories which I can transfer and not write down. So
I think in a sense,
I need help.
The word alone, archive, in these days simply means internet, period.
Not only.
So we are behind
no,
period.
No, no. Actually, you see, unfortunately, on internet, it starts to be way too much, and nobody is making a selection, and you get lost in all this amount of information. If you want to count on something, tomorrow you are not sure that you can find. So, of course, I want to end up there, but I need help. For this, I need help from my context.
There is a physicality of this archive. You can't do it on internet. And there's another aspect which is very essential to it. It's like I thought it's a voice-activated installation. Lia have to be there. So it's like you can have all the books from the planet in this room, so what? If you cannot activate them and you cannot link them, forget about it. So I think that's what we prefer, more the physicality, the meeting, the real, the life coming to the books and to the information. Maybe some parts of it, maybe some kind of model, it will be, I don't know, probably.
If you want to know very short, the most important things in a library, go and talk with the librarian. They know everything.
So you have to meet the librarian.
At least what they have. So you know, I'm so control freak. I love my books. I loved all the time. But having the archive and willing to share in order to be able to talk with the others, when somebody asked me for the book, I said, okay, tomorrow. Until tomorrow, I read all the book. Only like that I could give away. So that's why I really know almost everything in my
It was not meant to be to this kind of global thinking. It starts with a real answer to a context, and it grew. Now it's in a redefining moment. So
but internet is very useful. I will not maybe better. Have this maybe clear overview without hypertext, without seeing and trying the possibilities of internet.
I also have to tell you that maybe the idea that with a simple click you can get to somebody's 20 years of life and profit about, maybe it's too simple. So maybe you have to somehow work for this simple click.
No, but I like shortcuts. You know? I like shortcuts. I like to talk with all of you and tell me 5 favorite films, 5 books, because immediately, in an instant, I will have a selection of quality and interest.
As I understand it, the pure essence of your archive are connections, are things, how they are
not
put
only,
together.
it's part of, yes. It's part of.
That's the essence of the link.
Yeah, I told you, yes, I'm using, I hope that I will be there, but I need help.
Okay.
But you had sometimes period when you don't have any information, except any information but tabula rasa.
Almost. I mean...
That you feel yourself with the archive.
I think...
No, during the communist time we didn't have contemporary information, but we had books and we read a lot because we had a lot of time. So almost everybody was reading really a lot, but more fiction. We wanted to get out of our real life. Now, I mean, after the revolution, I was fascinated only with non-fiction. It's a lot of fiction, by the way, but I wanted to have facts, to real things. I don't like to be in the fiction of anybody anymore. I have
this
my thoughts.
Ironic, you know, that you don't have knowledge and information, and suddenly you have too much. So as if it's like a mirror image, somehow you don't, also you are lost. So this is a Lia strategy to
one student
through,
from
but
Berlin,
everybody can have a strategy with it.
One girl in Berlin, a student in art, she told me, realizing after the lecture and talk and so on, she told me that, hey Lia, but you know, I realized that my life is almost like yours, because now it is a lot of information, but nobody is making a selection. And yeah, there are, on internet you find everything, but you need people to tell you, look for this, look for that.
To tell you the difference between the Mozart
some
Fugue
addresses.
And Mozart.
Otherwise you get lost, and very soon we again will be lost in garbage. You see already, looking for something and then advertising it's coming, or
I think
you cannot count on the truth.
the whole deal is you find your way,
Quality.
because there are strategies who make
And
it do
time.
well than us, and people can be very enthusiastic about knowledge or can reject it, because sometimes it's too much and you're driven by the theory and the books. You'll never be practical because everything was done already. So everybody have a different archive.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming. We can continue to talk.
Yes, I always love listening to you. I feel very connected. Thanks, Doris. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Yeah.
We will not be able to